one night in October, November, I was freezing to death, and I had, well, not freezing to death, I'm a woman, and, you know, the heat wasn't enough, and we have this lovely gas fireplace, and I was afraid to turn it on for the first time of the season, because I didn't know if there was something I was supposed to do to it, to prime it, or to turn on the gas pilot, or anything like that. And she sent her husband over. She's like, we have a gas fireplace. My husband will come over. He'll fix it. And he'll make sure it's safe. You know, because I was so sure that with the natural gas, I was just going to blow up my house. And, you know, and it was totally fine. But it was so nice that some lady I never met lent me her husband to come and fix my gas fireplace for an evening. And, you know, it was just, you know, it's those kinds of things.
West Hartford, with its small city population of 64,000, can feel daunting and isolating. 2 public high schools divide the town, students and families never interacting except in competition. Neighbors pass each other on the streets without ever stopping to say hello. Though the town's motto is where city style meets village charm, it seems impossible to get that village feel in a town so large and divided. West Hartford Neighbors and Friends is closing this gap.
It was originally started because I posted on my personal feed that my father's house had been broken into. When I did that, I discovered there's a ton of them in the local area within a 4-block radius, the same thing. And I realized there was no way for us to know that. There was no connection unless you heard it through word of mouth. So it was originally started as a way to make sure that people knew what was happening in the neighborhood. And it has kind of blossomed from there. It's actually, I started it in June of 2012. So it's been going for a while. It's only been in the last 3 years that it's really been active. But that was the original intent, was to make sure people knew, not necessarily the bad, but the good also, what was happening. There was no way to be connected unless you could gather facts from a lot of different places, and not everybody was doing that. So that's why I actually started.
Normally, I probably would have only engaged with, like, the parents directly involved in the scout troop or involved in the school PTA or, you know, whatever. You know, now it's, you know, I even engaging with people from Hall. And, you know, normally, you know, it wasn't anybody from that side of town because, you know, we weren't up there. And, you know, you realize that West Hartford's not smaller than you thought it was, because, you know, there's somehow that separation.
It's amazing who you find out who knows who, and, you know, what is it, 7 degrees of separation?
I met Karen through a different Facebook site. Was that on Neighbors and Friends? With
I can't even remember. It was for
volunteering at the shelter.
Right.
I think that was on Neighbors and Friends.
I think it was too.
Yeah.
I think it was Sarah was looking for
Some volunteers.
Volunteers to help at a homeless shelter in Hartford as far as serving. And so I responded, and Melissa responded, and then we started talking.
Yeah.
And she's like, I can't believe this. Like, I've always wanted to go to hairdressing school.
Right.
I'm like, what? That's what we have that in West Hartford. And she's like,
yeah.
And so it was just instant bond, and we knew that this was going to be our path. So
Yeah, I met Karen on a Saturday volunteering, and I'm like, wait, you have an academy in your salon? I'm like, can I come on Tuesday? Like, I just was like, can I come now? And that was from the site. So
I've connected with a number of people, including 3 families that I was teaching the trumpet to. I'm 2 of them I'm still teaching, but I remain in communication and friendly contact with all of them. And I've also met a lot of people in these candid civic conversations, people I've connected with because I think that their perspective on things is interesting, and I'd like to hear more. You know, people I disagree with whose perspective I think is interesting, and I'd like to hear more. And I have managed to connect with a number of different people who care about this town passionately and want to see it get better. And so So I think that the Neighbors and Friends has done a great service in that regard.
It's funny, I've gotten to meet a few people specifically because of the Neighbors and Friends. They've asked to meet me, or, I've been by somebody and they're like, I know you. And, so it kind of comes like that. My kids think it's kind of funny that some of their teachers are like, oh, that's your mom, which sometimes I'm not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing. But there's nothing specific that stands out. I like hearing about those ones that have met or reconnected sometimes. Oh, I think I went to school with. So it's kind of nice to see that kind of come around. But yeah, I have run into a few people that the only way I know them is through that, and they can put a name and a face together. So it is kind of cool.
Sometimes friendships are made even before a resident moves into town.
Okay, so Rachel was moving up here, and her family, she would be like, what's this neighborhood like? What are the schools like? And people would be like chiming in. I think people actually, like, that she was meeting through the board, actually were looking at houses for her and walking through with like their phones on video. I know there were a couple of houses in this neighborhood that I was pointing her towards. I know I put her in touch with somebody else that I knew was about to put one up. Other people were, giving her leads. When she came into town, she only came into town for like 2 days and had to buy a house. And, without the issues, like the kids were home with the father, and she ended up like stuck here, and she's like, I have to get to the train station, and I'm like, I don't know you. I hope you trust me, but I'll drive you to the train station, in New Haven, and like, it just was the kind of, we had been chatting like back and forth in Messenger about all different stuff, and, it just didn't seem strange.
New England's rich history of town meetings, community engagement, and public discourse are a staple topic in high school history classes. Somehow, though, one of the region's most defining traditions has become a thing of the past. Town meetings are comprised of only town officials, and community engagement feels low. Again, Neighbors and Friends seems to be changing this.
I think that there was a long time in this town that I've lived here since 1999. I was 4 years old, and I wasn't paying a ton of attention when I was 4, but I've been following news and current events in this town for many, many years. And I think that there was a long period in West Hartford where there was little to no conversation about what was going on in town, what kind of government we want to have, what we want from our town. And I think that benefited people who got to make those decisions because they didn't have to consider broader popular opinion on things. They didn't have to go to the community in the same way. And I think that Neighbors and Friends and other groups like that have the potential to change that. I think that they have the potential to have a real bottom-up public discourse where everyday people can voice their opinions about things and can disagree with each other, sometimes very passionately, and really have conversations about where we're going. I think that Neighbors and Friends has made it so that nothing can happen in this town without quite a few people knowing about it.
So Neighbors and Friends it's kind of a conundrum. It's a whole lot of different things, but one of the things it does for me is gives me a great source of story ideas. So, sometimes a topic will come up, something that I don't even know about. Maybe it's on the other side of town, or maybe it's even right in my own neighborhood, but I just wasn't aware of it. And people will start talking, and it'll give me the idea of it being a news story that needed to be told. A lot of times now, people will tag me into the story, so I won't even have to just be randomly searching through Neighbors and Friends. It'll come up in my notifications that, there's a question out there, and they kind of task me with the as being the person who needs to go out and get the answers.
I'd probably say more for me personally when I ask questions, it's more for referrals and asking, what do you think and things like that. But I do like going on there and reading about the other things that are going on in town, and somebody saying, oh, did you know that the sidewalk is really bad over in this area, and be careful walkers and runners. So good information. I find now I'm more in tune with what's going on and hearing about, oh, I knew that, fair or something was coming to town or near town, and now I'm more apt to remember it because I see it on there.
The purpose of West Hartford Neighbors and Friends varies from person to person using the Facebook group.
It's finding the business recommendations, hey, I can read on Yelp what it says, but what do you as a neighbor think of this place, or where should I go for this? It's evolved to looking for referrals, the heads up of what is happening. There was a few weeks ago when there was that issue with a stolen car or something from Hartford that came into here, and it's a good way to know quickly. Of course, it also becomes a fear factor a little bit, and it gets blown out of proportion. But normally, most people can pull it back in and bring it to what it needs to be. But it definitely it's keeping people involved, knowing what's happening in town. We just did the one with the free little libraries, and people didn't realize what they were. Some people were joking about them and things like that, but a lot of people really had no idea what they were there for. So it helps.
Some use it to spread the word of their businesses.
It just makes it easy for you to share your experiences. There's so many people, especially in our area, that have so many gifts and talents, and it's like people talk about it, and it just instantly bonds everybody. So it's pretty amazing.
My husband's a business owner in the town as well, and he has a lot of positive referrals that come through from that site. So that's been great to help my husband on his last leg of his business journey, get some new clientele, or even just have our friends, our families, our neighbors chip in, and not only from the salon endeavor, but his business. And I've found babysitters, which is a mother of 4, has been amazing. And learned about other events. So I like to keep it positive. I think as our neighbors and friends, sometimes everyone has an opinion, and everyone likes to voice their opinion, but if we all respect each other, and not take things personally, we all have the good come out of it. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I use it for pretty extensively, but I try to do it judiciously, is to share the stories that I do write. When I'm writing something that I think really impacts the entire community, like an article about the upcoming election in West Hartford specifically, I will post that on Neighbors and Friends because there are more than 8,000 people on that site, and it's almost as good as breaking news. I think people monitor it really carefully, and I can just look at the number of page views of my story going up just really quickly as soon as I post it on that site. I try to be judicious about it, though, so I only share stories that I think will be of interest to the overall community. If it's more targeted to just one certain group, I put it on my own Facebook page, but I don't want to overwhelm the newsfeed.
Others use it as a forum for public discourse.
Well, I think Neighbors and Friends is important for our community because it serves this role of connecting people for business reasons, for social reasons, but also for civic reasons. I think that Neighbors and Friends has the potential to be a really important forum to discuss issues in our town and the things that matter. West Hartford severely lacks for public discourse and a civic interest among its citizenry. We don't have a daily newspaper, and we don't really have the kind of vibrant and oftentimes controversial civic life that most towns and cities our size do. And I think that Neighbors and Friends provides the potential for West Hartford residents to discuss what kind of town we want to be, what our values are, and sometimes we see that when Neighbors and Friends veers into discussions about civic issues and issues of community importance. There was a lot of conversation about changing the high school mascots. There was a lot of conversation about the potential for a Chinese school to move into town at the Yukon property. There's a lot of discussion about a recent Black Lives Matter protest. And, not everybody, of course, wants to always have these conversations. And the good thing about Facebook is you don't have to. But for those who do, and I do think that it's valuable, Neighbors and Friends provides the opportunity for us to talk about, again, what kind of town we want to have, what our values are, what's important to us, and where we want to go in the future. And it may be the only real public forum where that happens in this town.
And some have even found comfort and help after loss.
I think I was trying to think when I joined the board, and it was probably like January 2015. And I was just, kind of waded in like a little bit at a time, and just sort of got my feet wet trying to figure out, who's who and, the major players. And it was still a little rough. I think it was pretty new at that point. And people had a little rough time with the rules. And the moderator was trying so hard to keep people from getting out of control, but there were like, these occasional, what we call trolls. And, it made it hard for some people because you would post an opinion on something and somebody would just attack you. And I think it drove a lot of people away. But those that stuck with it really found like there were friends there, friends to be had or whatever. And in March of 2015, my husband got sick. He had not been really well, but he got very sick very quickly and unexpectedly and ended up in the hospital. And, it was it was all a whirlwind. And I was like way over my head on everything that I had trying to do. It was like 2 weeks and he passed away. And, I was, during that time, I would occasionally post on the board because I was like looking for like suggestions on how to do this or what to do for this, because I had no experience on so many things. A house, taking care of a house, taking care of the bills. The big thing at that point I was obsessing about was doing my own taxes, because I hadn't done them since I was like, in my 20s and had a part-time job. And it was just, and I think at that point you fixate on little things, but it was just like driving me crazy. Like, I don't know what to do. I know I need an extension because I don't even know where all the paperwork is, and I don't even know how to file an extension. And everybody was just chiming in like, here's my tax preparer, and I can put a word in for you. I'm sure they'll make room for you. And one of the guys on the board actually does taxes on the side, and he's like, I'll come to your house, I'll file your extensions. When things calm down, we'll sit down and we'll do your taxes. And he did, and he's now my tax preparer, and he's somebody I met through that. Great guy. And it's been like that all along. That's how I've gotten through the last 16 months, I swear. Finding the things that I needed. Like the other thing I obsessed about at that point was, oh my gosh, my son's suit has to go to the dry cleaners. I don't know how to get it there because I'm at the hospital, somebody took his suit to the dry cleaners. It was like perfect strangers were offering, well, I don't know anything about taxes, but can I drive your kids somewhere, because they were 16 at the time, and they didn't have driver's licenses yet. And, it was back and forth to the hospital, and, like literally perfect strangers who I felt like they were friends and I would have probably trusted my kids to, were like, can I bring them up to the hospital for you after, or to an event, to a lesson or an event or a sports practice or whatever, it was like amazing. So that was when I was like completely hooked. And then people, throughout, like I was then, after the funeral, it was like, I don't know how to find out how to pay the bills. I don't even know what bills I'm supposed to have. I don't know the passwords for anything. And, like people were helping me become like a master hacker to try to well, if you do this and then you do that, then you could get this password and you have that password and then you can, I mean, it was crazy, but people were just chiming in with all these suggestions.
Since 2012, residents of West Hartford have been joining West Hartford Neighbors and Friends, strangers to one another, but have turned into something much more. They have truly become neighbors and friends.
I think too that sometimes our prospective new clients from the site, I think that they come in with already like this amazing comfort level, just because our community is really united in this endeavor, in this site, and they come in feeling comfortable already, or just somebody who heard about us was in last week, and I had the honor of getting to do her hair, a new technique that I had just learned, and when she saw it, she was like, yes, this is what I always wanted, and to be the agent I am, to get to help somebody in our community just feel really good about themselves. I can't even put a word or a price tag on how that feels.
I also recently broke my ankle, so I'm a little laid up. So, so many people, I said that I was interested in horror movies, scary movies, and I had Netflix. So there's many in the feed, 47 comments wishing me well on my recovery, but also giving me great things to watch while I'm laid up.
The one non-news story or non-news interaction that I had with it recently was I had all of the magnets stolen from my car just about 2 weeks ago. It was parked at Conard High School by the baseball field, and I went to put my chair back in the back of the car, and I had 4 kind of prized magnets there, and they were gone. So I was really mad because it's a senseless act of vandalism that really impacts only me. They're not going to sell them to make money or anything like that. So the first time ever, I posted this little rant on Neighbors and Friends, and I got so many likes and so many people who said, oh, that's happened to me too, which made me feel like, okay, maybe they weren't targeting me because they didn't like the last story I wrote. Maybe it was just like a random and senseless act of vandalism, and it was just nice to know that you're part of that community, and other people in West Hartford, even a ton of people I didn't know, really look at what you're posting and kind of care and weigh in. And 2 of the magnets have been replaced by people on Neighbors and Friends. So a teacher at Conard brought me a CHS sticker, so now I have that again for my car. And then another reader got me a WeHa sticker, which was one of the ones stolen. So now I just need to get the sticker for my favorite vacation place, which I'll do as soon as I go back there. And I might have to run another half marathon to get the 13.1 magnet that I had.
I'm just happy it's done what it is, even though sometimes, it's a little over the top. But for the most part, everybody plays nicely, and it's nice that there are that many people invested in the town, whether, even with the negative comments, you're invested in your town, and it's nice to see that, that we can impact change somehow and impact what happens in our town.